Welcome to Christian Warrior Training. My name is Keith. We are going to talk about recognizing terrorism at your church. Now, some of you may want to dismiss this, but I just want to remind you, we ignored 9/11. Prior to 9/11, there were some students that wanted to learn how to fly, but not how to land. Those are called red flags, and we ignored them all. And then we all know what happened after that. Now, I'm hoping that this video ages well. I'm filming this on October 23rd of 2023. The world has changed a little bit, and I'm here to remind you what to look for at your church. Now, I don't want to be an alarmist. I'm not trying to create panic. I just want to create awareness so you can protect your church. Part of this means that if we are to be hit again, and they were to, let's say they were going to do active shooter incidents at multiple churches at the same time, which go back and look at my Hamas video and Hezbollah video where I talk about the chances of that happening. If they were to do that, they are not just going to show up and start shooting. There are going to be indicators that they're looking at your church first. It's the same with any kind of an active shooter. It could be just a lone wolf that's angry at your church and angry at religion that wants to shoot up your church. There will always be indicators, not always, but a majority of the time, will be indicators ahead of time. And we're going to talk about what those indicators are, what to look for, what to do, and how to prevent those things from happening. The first thing that they're going to do is they're going to do surveillance. Now, surveillance is going to be that initial step in the planning phase of a potential terrorist attack. Now, it involves a systematic observation of places, people, or data to gather information. Now, for churches being public and open spaces, it's crucial to understand and recognize the signs of surveillance to thwart any malevolent intentions. Now, this section delves into the intricacies of surveillance activities and how they might manifest around church premises and how church security teams can effectively respond. Now, surveillance in the context of terrorism is the methodical observation and documentation of activities in a particular area. Perpetrators are going to conduct surveillance to understand the daily operations, assess security measures, and identify vulnerabilities within the target area. Now, in a church setting, this might include noting the times of services, the number of attendees, the entrances and exits, including which ones are locked and unlocked, and the response of the security team to certain situations. Now, recognizing suspicious activities is pivotal in detecting possible surveillance attempts. Now, here are some indicators. Unusual or prolonged presence of individuals around the church premises without any apparent reason. Individuals seen recording or photographing the church, especially focusing on entrances, exits, security cameras, and other security measures. People found sketching diagrams, taking notes, or using binoculars or other vision-enhancing devices to observe the premises. Vehicles parked in the same area over prolonged periods, especially with occupants observing the church and individuals attempting to engage church staff or security in conversations regarding security protocols or other sensitive information. Now, this reminds me, right after 9/11, one of the officers I worked with stopped a man who was overlooking and taking photos of a national nuclear security complex. This is immediately after 9/11. He stopped and talked to him. We were expecting some kind of terrorism activity, meaning like terrorists present. And the officer knew this wasn't right, stopped him, asked for identification. He got a passport and found that the man had just come from the Middle East and arrived 4 hours earlier at San Francisco International Airport. The officer ran that person's name, and the FBI immediately called because they had flagged that person's name saying, we're interested in him because he's on a terrorist watch list. That's all I'm going to talk about with that incident. I'm bringing it up because it was one person that was out doing their job, paying attention, and taking notes. And the officer stopped him, contacted him, and his intuition was right. So let's talk about how you're going to respond. One of the big things is you want to document and report. Now, document the suspicious activity with as much detail as possible, including descriptions of individuals, vehicles, times, and the nature of suspicious activity. You want to report the findings to the appropriate authorities. Again, this reminds me of another incident where at one of our local airports after 9/11, there was a person following a fuel tanker from airport to airport. The tanker driver documented this activity, including license plates, turned that in, and it was valid. The information was valid. I don't think the general public realizes, because we don't advertise it, how much activity happens that is seen by people that gets reported and it turns out to be accurate. It doesn't get reported that much. So document and report. You want to enhance your visibility, increase the visibility of security measures around the church, such as security personnel and surveillance cameras. I recommend that security teams wear some type of visible clothing that identifies them as security. They are not going to hit somebody with security that they can see. If they come in and don't see your security, you have the potential of getting hit. If they walk in and see there are security members at the entrances, then they're not going to hit you because they are going to die immediately, and they're going to want to go somewhere else to get a higher kill count, and they'll go to the church with unlocked doors that aren't monitored with no security. And also it makes sense anyways too, because as an officer responding, I want to make sure that I know that you're on my team, and it's best all around. There is a theory amongst some teams of like, I don't want anybody to know who I am because then they're going to shoot me first. Oh, okay. That's the risk you take. Police officers take that risk every day. And sometimes, yes, they get shot and they're the first ones to get shot. I would rather them shoot at me than the people around me because I will deal with this. Okay. You want to engage and question people, like politely engage in individuals exhibiting suspicious behavior and inquire about their activities. So while maintaining a friendly demeanor, observe the reactions and responses. I do this all the time at my church. I actually stand next to the greeter. And when they look suspicious, I'm like, hey, welcome to my church. I've seen you before. Is there anything I can point you to the right direction? What can I help you with? Most people say, this is a new church. I haven't been here yet. And you'll see a common way of people talking to you. And if they don't go along with that, then you know to watch them. And you can simply call another staff member to come keep an eye on them. So that way you can take care of the church. You want to do training. You want to ensure that all your church staff and your volunteers are trained to recognize suspicious activities and know the procedures for reporting them. Now, you can get free training here at Christian Warrior Training. I suggest that your greeters and your people that work in the parking lot get this training. They are the ones that are going to see things before security usually. Everything starts in the parking lot and goes from there because they got to park and then walk their way in, right? Now, the next thing to worry about is something called elicitation. Elicitation stands as a subtle yet significant red flag indicating possible malicious intentions towards a community or an establishment such as a church. Now, it involves the strategic extraction of information that could be used to orchestrate harmful acts. Now, for church security teams, comprehending the nuances of elicitation, its signs, and how to counteract such attempts is indispensable for ensuring the safety of their congregations. Now, elicitation in a terroristic context is the act of gathering crucial information that can be used to plan an attack. Now, this information could pertain to the security measures in place, the schedule of church activities, or the personnel in charge of security. Now, this discrete nature of elicitation often makes it challenging to identify as it can occur through casual conversations, emails, phone calls, or even seemingly innocuous social media interactions. For those of you that have online ministries, watch your online ministry chat and see what's being said in there. Go back and take a look. Let's talk about recognizing these attempts, right? The stealthy guise of elicitation requires a discerning eye to unveil. So you want to look for unsolicited inquiries about church security measures, personnel, or schedules, whether in person, over the phone, or by email. They can pose as another church, asking how you do security so they can mimic the same thing, when in reality, they're trying to get details about your security team. We have those phone calls. They've all been other churches wanting to know because we have a good security team and they want to know more. They see these videos. They know that what church I go to in my area, and they call and ask for information. I would only do that in person or unless you actually know the person. They attempt to engage staff, security personnel, or congregation members in discussions about sensitive topics or information. Individuals or groups showing an unusual interest in church operations, especially regarding security protocols. Persistent or overly curious individuals seeking information about past incidents, security systems, or emergency response procedures within the church. And encounters with individuals posing as contractors, inspectors, or officials seeking information without proper identification or authorization. I did that as an undercover narcotics detective quite frequently. When I wanted to go take a quicker look at a house, sometimes I would pose as an electrical worker, some type of utility worker, a city worker, and I would drive up in one of their vehicles and, wear an orange vest, take my photos, talk to people, do whatever. And I got the greatest information. Nobody ever asked for my ID, ever. So let's talk about securing information. Okay. So in a world where information is power, securing sensitive data is crucial in warding off potential threats. Now, here are some measures you can take. You can establish a protocol for handling inquiries, especially those concerning security or operational matters. Now, you want to ensure that staff and security personnel are educated on these protocols. You want to implement a visitor verification process to authenticate the identity of individuals seeking information or access to the church premises. You want to foster a culture of vigilance among the congregation, educating them on the importance of safeguarding information and reporting unusual inquiries or interactions. And this is all going to be hard because we're a church and we want to be open. And having an open church is important, but that doesn't mean that you're not going to still safeguard your information. You want to limit the public disclosure of sensitive information regarding church security measures, personnel, and schedules. This could extend to social media, websites, and printed materials. One of my classes I pulled up a random church's floor plan from their website to use as an example of how to attack it. They left it online, the floor plan. I get that. I get that you want to be open, you want people to find things. And it was a fairly large church, but you gave me a blueprint of how to attack it. That should not be online. They can walk up. There are many people in the church that are going to help them find where they want to go. You want to collaborate with local law enforcement to share insights and develop strategies for preventing and responding to elicitation attempts. Now, look, when I was a cop, there were things that I can talk about publicly and not talk about publicly. There's kind of think about it as secret information, information you want to get out. But if you ask me in a public forum, I'm probably not going to answer you about certain things because I'll get in trouble for releasing that information. But I personally think it needs to be out there. So if you ask me one-on-one and we have a meeting, like I've had that where I've had a meeting at a church, I told them everything because it's a little bit easier for me to tell them like, hey, this isn't for public consumption, but now they can protect themselves a little bit better. My recommendation is reach out to your law enforcement agency, ask for a meeting with somebody that runs intelligence or would have that information. If it's a larger agency, they'll have intelligence. My agency from my area has an intelligence shop that I can talk to. If you're in a smaller city, then just talking to the chief or a captain or somebody and sitting down with them, they may or may not be forthright with you. I don't know, but it's worth sitting down and talking to them about what they can tell you. The next thing is going to be tests of security. I just want to take a break from training just for a minute to ask you a quick favor. If you appreciate the free training that we get here, could subscribe to the paid edition of the Christian Warrior Training. What that does is I take that money to put back into training here to provide free. Now, we've only been open for a few short months, and in those few short months, we've already had 1,000 church security team members take training through this venue. Now, I only want you to do the paid subscription if you can afford it. If you can't afford it, just ignore this whole thing. Enjoy the training. We want to make you the best Christian warrior that we can make you. But if you can afford it, subscribing to the Christian Warrior Training is going to help me continue to pump out content, pay for the cameras, pay for the platform it's hosted on. All these things take time. So whatever help you can give, I would appreciate it. All right, let's get back to training. Tests of security within the context of terrorism entail deliberate attempts to measure the effectiveness and response of security protocols. Now, by probing the existing security measures, potential aggressors are going to aim to find vulnerabilities that they can exploit. In a church setting, this could involve attempts to breach physical barriers, bypass security personnel, or trigger security systems to observe the response. Now, discerning actual tests of security from innocuous or accidental incidents is crucial. So here's some indicators. Repeated attempts to access restricted areas of the church premises. The other day, we have an area in my church that I worry about. It's right next to our sound booth. It is in a restricted area, and I saw a man standing there holding something, overlooking the congregation. He's up on an elevated platform looking down. Freaked me out a little bit. I moved quickly over there. It's a large church. We have about 3,000 people over the weekend come through, and I just gently touched him on the shoulder. And when he turned around, I saw it was the worship minister, and he was just taking photos, but you can't see in the dark from far away. And when he looked and he turned towards me, he just smiled, and he knew exactly what I was doing. I'm like, sorry, brother, go back to what you were doing. And I saw, that was 2 weeks ago, and I saw him this weekend, and he saw me, and he's like, hey, what are you doing? And it was like, no harm, no foul. I think he was happy that I was paying attention and I was looking, and there was no big deal. But what if I touch him and he turned around and it's a guy holding a gun? We've got a different problem. Or it's a guy that I don't recognize. You're immediately just going to say, hey, sir, what can I do? Why are you here? How can I help you? And then what you want to do is tell him, let's come on downstairs away from everybody so they can worship in peace, and let's talk outside, because he is in an area that's not supposed to be. You need to find out why. Individuals or groups conspicuously testing physical security measures like locks, gates, and surveillance systems. I have other videos that I've shown of the Satanic Church visiting a church in Boise, showing up armed, and you can see them walking past and forth. This church didn't really have much of a response because I don't know if they had a security team or not. They certainly could be judging what that church is doing, because where I'm at, you can have open carry. So were they testing to see what's going to happen so we can come back later? They are Satanists after all. You got attempts to trigger alarms or emergency response systems to gauge reaction time. So they might throw an alarm just to see how long it takes you to respond. Engage security personnel in scenarios designed to distract or assess their level of alertness or training. So they may come up with some pseudo emergency out in the parking lot that sounds very bad. Does it draw everybody away and into there? Do you call police? What do you do? Observe or record the response of security personnel to simulate threats or incidents. Now, you're going to want to Now, the insight gained from identifying tests of security can be instrumental in bolstering the protective measures in place. Now, here are some protective steps and proactive steps that you can take. You want to review and update security protocols. So based on the observations made during the test, review and amend security protocols to address and identify any identified weaknesses. You want to do training and drills. I recommend my team does this all the time. I don't know if they do or not. I know one campus does. We have 4 campuses. I know one campus does. I don't know if the others are doing it or not. I hope they are, because the drills really help. I know you guys are watching. You want to conduct regular training sessions and drills for security personnel and staff to ensure that they're equipped to respond effectively to various scenarios. One of the drills that I told them to do this week, and we just taught them on Saturday how to deal with stairwells, which stairwells you just, in an active shooter scenario, there's more than just going up and down. They're actually big fatal funnels. And we taught them how to go up and down properly for their safety. And we told them to go back and practice, and they could use finger guns while they're going up and down to a stairwell that nobody can see. So there's all sorts of different things you can do. You want to enhance your physical security, upgrade locks, barriers, surveillance systems, or other physical security measures to deter potential aggressors. I went to a church this weekend for a meeting, and their lobby is wide open. There's no ballards out front, meaning things that block the front from a car coming through. I can literally take a car, drive through the front door, drive all the way into the lobby, so I can run everybody over coming into church at the busiest point right when it starts, with everybody coming in with Starbucks because they're late getting their Starbucks. I can literally run everybody over, run into the lobby, drive all around, run everybody over, back up again, do it again, and then initiate my assault, and then come out with a rifle, and then come out shooting. That is easily stopped by just putting up ballards that a car can't come by. But I think this church is worried about the openness, that it would harm the open feel. But man, we live in a dangerous world now. And it doesn't matter if you're in Iowa, Idaho, New Mexico, Ohio, or New York City, you have to take these measures. It's a different world. You want to foster a culture of vigilance. So you want to encourage church members, staff, and volunteers to report any suspicious activity, and foster a collective sense of responsibility towards security. And again, you're going to hear it again. Collaborate with law enforcement. You want to go ahead and hook up with your local law enforcement agency, chat with them. You'll be surprised. Some of them are going to talk to you more openly. I always told myself, if I was the sheriff or chief, I would actually create a position within the department that is a liaison between all the churches. Train them, coordinate with them, give them intelligence. If you're a chief or sheriff listening to this, it could be a supplemental assignment. You'll have a good Christian in your group that will want to do that. So you should make that happen. The other thing you have to worry about is impersonation. In the realm of potential threats, impersonation involves individuals posing as someone that they are not to fulfill malicious intentions. Now, this could entail impersonating church personnel, law enforcement officers, or other authoritative figures. Now, the aim is to exploit trust and to access restricted areas or information. Okay, so as an example, this is not my equipment from my days on SWAT. This is literally something I just bought the other day, and I have some police patches laying around, and I threw it on there. And I can tell you right now, if I show up with body armor and civilian clothes to an incident with a rifle, and I've got my body armor that has police on the front and back, I can get those patches anywhere. I can order them online. I can embroider them myself. And I show up, they're going to let me through because I'm just acting like I need to be. As a narcotics detective, I did that all the time. I always pretended to be somebody else to gain access into a drug dealer or whatever else I needed to get into. I was constantly lying about who I was to get intelligence. Nobody ever double checks for identification, ever. So impersonation is something that is a super big deal with terrorism. I remember during 9/11, right after 9/11, there were a lot of incidents of somebody going into cleaners, like dry cleaners, and stealing police uniforms, fire uniforms, people stealing ambulances, people stealing fire trucks. And that was one of the things that we had to worry about, was that they were going to wear our uniform. And we see that in other countries, that they will wear police uniforms and pretend to be somebody coming in. So that is something we do have to worry about. There has been more than one incident where gang members have gotten jobs as cops or gotten in the military so they can get the training, quit, and then come back and train all the other people. So impersonation is a big deal, and I hope you pay attention to it. Now, vigilance and scrutiny are essential in detecting impersonation. So here's some indicators. Individuals lacking proper identification or avoiding verification while claiming to be part of a church staff, a contractor, or law enforcement. I can tell you, in my police department, we were required to carry our police ID. Now, I didn't like carrying a wallet on me when I was working because I didn't need it, but I always had to pull my police ID out, put it in my pocket. In 30 years, when I was in uniform, I was never asked for my identification. Now, I did show up in a police car, and I mean, they probably called the police or what have you, and I get that. But as an example, working undercover or I worked a lot in plain clothes where I just dressed like this every day. And I would come up and I would be like, hey, police officer, I'd like to talk to you for a moment. And people just be like, oh, okay. Nobody ever asked for my identification. They just took it for granted. I mean, I guess I look like cop, but I mean, I know it's hard to imagine, but at one time I had a big mullet and a big fat goatee, like a ZZ Top goatee. And I would walk up, say, police officer, I would like to talk to you for a moment. And they'd be like, okay, you don't look like a cop. It's because I work undercover. We need to talk though. And they're like, okay. And they did. It was hilarious. I would go door to door and talk to people about like drug dealing people. And yeah, nobody ever asked for ID. So I get it, not asking for a guy that you call the police and the guy rolls up in a marked unit and he's in uniform, not asking for ID. But if some guy walks into your church and goes, hey, I'm a police officer, I would like to talk to you for a moment. Awesome. Can I see your identification, please? And it was funny. I remember an FBI agent contacted me one time and he goes, hey, so-and-so with the FBI, and they like holding up their credentials. And I was like, awesome. Can I see that, please? And he looked at me like, what? And I'm like, I've never seen an FBI ID. I was younger then. I'm like, I don't know what it looks like. And he goes, oh. And I literally took it, held it up, looked at the picture, looked at him, went through what the document said, because there are federal agents. And then I learned later there are actually other federal agents who don't have law enforcement powers, but have actual IDs. And I read through it and it's like, oh, now I know what they look like. Here you go. And he goes, man, he goes, and he was an older FBI agent. He's like, I've never been asked that before. And I'm like, well, maybe more people should ask. He goes, you're right. Like he had never thought about it. Ask for that ID, man. Same thing with anybody coming into work. Like if they're going to come work on something in the church, ask for ID. Behavior that's inconsistent with the claimed identity, such as unfamiliarity with church operations, personnel, or standard procedures. So they come in and say there are a Christian church team leader for a security ministry, and they would like to look at your operations. And while you're talking to them, you can tell they've never worked security and they're not Christian. Well, there you go. Inconsistent or altered uniforms, badges, or identification cards. Unverified changes in personnel, especially in sensitive or security-related positions. Individuals that seek access to restricted areas or information without proper authorization or justification. Now, implementing some kind of verification protocol can significantly deter impersonation attempts. So here's some measures that you can do. You want to establish some kind of verification procedure. You want to develop and implement procedures for verifying the identities of individuals claiming to be staff, contractors, or officials. You want to educate your staff and volunteers. You want to ensure that all church personnel are aware of the verification procedures and the importance of adhering to them. You want to enhance physical security measures. You want to utilize access controls, visitor logs, and other physical security measures to monitor and control access to the church premises. You want to collaborate with law enforcement. You want to work closely with local law enforcement agencies and share information. Again, I'm going to keep beating that dead horse. Contact your cops. The next thing they're going to do is rehearsal. Now, in the run-up to executing malicious acts, perpetrators are often going to engage in some kind of a rehearsal to refine their plans, synchronize their movements, ensure the effectiveness of their strategy. And in a church setting, this might involve individuals or groups testing the grounds, mapping routes, or practicing actions they intend to carry out. They might come to your church as a group and then start walking through the church like this is how they're going to come in and start shooting people. And when you see people giving head nods and moving throughout your church and then like saying, like making eye contact and stuff, you should start thinking about that. Identifying rehearsal activities requires a vigilant and informed approach. So here are some indicators. Unusual patterns of individuals or groups visiting the church premises, especially at odd hours or during non-service times. Repeated exploration of entry points and exit points, sensitive areas, or security installations. Observations of individual or groups simulating actions or movements, such as timing the intervals between security patrols. Suspicious vehicles loitering around the premises or individuals conducting dry runs of routes leading to or from the church. Abandoned packages, unusual items, or signs of tampering with security installations that might indicate practice attempts. Now, let's talk about preemptive measures. Okay, so prompt action and recognizing potential rehearsal activities is vital. So here's some things that you can do. You can document and report. You want to maintain a log of unusual activities, complete with descriptions, timings, and any other pertinent details. Report suspicions to law enforcement promptly. I recommend that you actually have a log for each service, and anything that you think was out of the ordinary should go in that log, and it could like put down license plates, descriptions. If there's a video from your video feed in there, you might want to save that or at least point to where we can go look at that. It'll be important later. You want to increase your security presence. Some churches, amazingly, don't have safety ministries. Those days are over. Even if you're in a very small church, like I was in a church in California with only 40 people. I was the security team. I literally was armed every time, and I sat right by the back door, because if like I'm sitting at the back door and the door's right here, when they walk in, they go past you every single time, and I can literally grab a hold of anybody that's doing anything bad. So you want to increase your security presence. You want to engage the community. You want to encourage church community to report unusual observations and ensure they're aware of the appropriate channels for reporting. Many churches have the view that they want to remain open and not have people afraid to do anything. To the contrary, and I'm in a church like that, but to the contrary, I have people come to me all the time and say, "Are you in church security?" I am. Man, I'm glad you guys are here. They feel better knowing that somebody's watching their back. I think it's important. You want to review and adjust security protocols. You want to assess the existing security measures and adjust them to address identified vulnerabilities. And you, again, collaborate with law enforcement. The last thing that we're going to talk about, we're almost done, is deployment. Now, deployment signifies the positioning of people and materials in preparation for executing a malicious act. Now, in this phase, perpetrators are likely going to display a heightened level of nervousness, urgency, or abnormal behavior as the time of the intended act approaches. Now, recognizing these signs of deployment early is going to provide a crucial advantage in preventing potential harm. Now, vigilance is the most important thing here in spotting deployment activities. So here's some indicators. Unusual arrival of individuals or groups who appear nervous, rehearsed, or out of place. Suspicious vehicles parked near the church premises, especially those with obscured license plates or loaded with unusual items. Individuals carrying backpacks, bags, or packages that seem out of context or overly heavy. Rapid movements or urgent conversations among individuals, especially those displaying signs of nervousness or unfamiliarity with the church environment. Abandoned packages, bags, or items that could potentially contain hazardous materials. Now let's talk about emergency response. Now, a swift and coordinated response to suspected deployment activities is super important. First things first, alert authorities. You want to immediately report suspected deployment activities to local law enforcement agencies. You want to engage whatever emergency protocols you have. Activate that church's emergency response protocols and ensure the safety of the congregation and staff. Now, look, there was an incident of terrorism just a couple of weeks ago in Virginia. This particular church employed an off-duty police officer. Cops call them paid jobs. You are in uniform, but you're off duty, but you're there to provide security. You have your department radio. You still have police officer powers, but you're there as private security, not as a cop. It's kind of a weird thing. Somebody called social media. Somebody saw a social media post where it was very apparent he was going to go shoot up a church that day. They alerted the police. The police did a search warrant at his house, saw a note in planning that showed he was going to hit a specific church in Virginia. As they put it out on the radio, that officer was in the church in the lobby and was watching the man come in and was able to take him out at gunpoint. Okay. His deployment was happening as the cop was at that front door, prevented a number of deaths by having proper security in place. That was deployment. In that incident, the officer's putting him down on the ground at gunpoint. It might be in a gunfight. That is where you're going to initiate whatever. Like for my church, I'm not going to go over what my church does because I want to keep it safe. But a regular church, what you can do then is activate your active shooter protocols. That could be locking down everybody and getting them down on the ground, watching for other potential attackers, assisting the officer, what have you. Okay. It is time. It's go time. You trained all this time. Personally, like when that stuff has happened in my life, I've always thought to my head is like, I've been training my whole life for this. Woohoo, it's go time. And when that actually happened, I remember my first hostage rescue. I'm like, I've been training for this. This is unfortunate for a hostage, but in my mind, I'm like, yeah, I finally get to do what I've been taught how to do. It's go time. You want to do lockdown procedures. So you want to initiate some kind of a lockdown process, secure those premises, and then wait until other law enforcement shows up to start providing protection. When it's safe, you want to conduct a coordinated evacuation of the premises. You don't want to, in that instance I just gave, you don't want to start evacuating right now because there's a lot of times there will be a shooter outside knowing that people are going to get shot as they come out. There was an incident, and I think it was Paducah, Kentucky, where two kids pulled an alarm. And when everybody came out, they just started shooting. And you just want to be I would not evacuate until you know it's safe to do so. And then most importantly, you want to talk to your congregation without causing panic. You want to, this is where the pastor is going to come in. He's standing up in front of everybody. This is where he's like, hey, we have a team that has this all under control. Let's just pray for their safety. And then that's it. And then you can keep them calm. If you're calm, they'll stay calm. And I've seen that where I've been on critical incidents. And I remember specifically we had an officer that was down. He put out an officer needs help call, which, means you're pulling the fire alarm and everybody's coming. And I was setting up what's called a REact team. And it's a team to deal with the bad people so we can evacuate the cop. When all said and was done, one of the cops came up to me and he's like, Sarge, I got to tell you, I've never done what you were asking me to do, but I felt totally comfortable doing it because you looked like you knew what you were doing and you were calm. And that calmness projected upon me. And you were so confident in what was going on. I felt confident. And I'm like, absolutely. He didn't know inside. I was peeing my pants inside because I got an officer down. I've got to rescue him. I got a bunch of gang members holed up in a house and I'm wondering if they're going to come out shooting and doing a final stand against us. Inside, I won't say I was terrified, but I was pretty nervous and I could feel it. I had butterflies in my stomach, but I just literally stood out there and projected calm like I'm doing right now and say, this is what we're going to do. You here, you there. You projecting calmness is going to make everybody else calm. So those are the 6 signs of terrorism activity in your church. Do me a favor. I want you to share this video to other like-minded Christians. Or if you're not Christian, share it to other people that have to deal with public venues. We're talking about churches, but literally this could be any open venue, any concert, bar, you name it. We need to get the word out. All right, we're going to go ahead and call for now. I'm going to have more classes coming up. Make sure that you sign up for our newsletter, christianwarriortraining.com. I put out training every single week. Last thing. This training is always free. I will always make it free. I will never charge for this. Do me a favor. If you want to, and you could afford it, if you can't, then don't do it. Then do a paid subscription to Christian Warrior Training. That helps me keep the lights on and to keep doing this because the software costs money, the platforms cost money. If you can't afford it, don't do it. I'd rather you donate to your church first. All right. So that's all I've got for now. Remember your ABCs. Always be caring,